Do you own a dog, cat, bird, or other pet? Did you know that many homeowners and renters policies don't cover animal or pet liability claims, so you may be held liable if an incident, accident, or claim occurs? At X Insurance, we provide customized liability insurance coverage for any animal or pet regardless of type, size, age, or bite history. X Insurance provides third-party liability coverage for injuries or property damage done to others by your pet. An X Insurance policy will fill the gaps in your homeowner's or renter's coverage and provide the protection you need for true peace of mind to protect your assets. X Insurance offers 30-plus years of professional experience, providing solutions for many types of specialty risks in all 50 states. If you own an ATV, electric scooter, golf cart, etc., then we've got you covered. Visit xinsurance.com or call 877-585-2853 today to learn more or to get a free quote.
Hi, I'm Sue Bova, and this is Welcome Home Doggy. So when I first heard the name, Pet Safety Crusader, I thought, superhero, right? Someone with a wonderful cape and a golden lasso and some special powers who traverses the globe helping keep pets safe. Well, I wasn't too far from wrong. Our guest today is nothing short of that, a real live pet superhero. Not only is she an award-winning author, a radio show host, and a former Paramount Pictures publicist for blockbusters like Ghost, Indiana Jones, and Forrest Gump, but more importantly, she has trained almost 20,000 animal lovers, giving them critical life-saving skills to help those that we love at home, our loyal, wonderful, precious family members, our pets. And with that, I would like to welcome Denise Fleck to Welcome Home Doggy today.
Sue, it's wow wonderful to be here. And I'm sorry, but my cape is in the dry cleaners, so you just got me and my precious one here.
Well, that's okay. We don't need the cape today. We'll just imagine that it's there. So, so much. It was hard for me to kind of know where to start, but I'd like to start with what you're doing today. And you are currently the president of the Gray Muzzle organization, correct?
That is correct.
And I noticed your shirt, "We're never too old to love and be loved." How awesome is that?
It's so true, because very often older dogs are the last ones to get adopted in shelters. Everybody wants the cute little puppies. And with an older dog like my girl Kiko here, you kind of get what you see. They've already grown into their paws and their personality. Very often they're calmer, they know their manners, and they just want to sit and look at you adoringly.
Absolutely. I happen to have 3 rescues, and 2 of them are seniors, and I've also adopted seniors before. And to your point, there are so many animals. They're the last ones left, right, at the shelter to adopt. And it's very, very sad, right? They experience loss just like we do as human beings.
Absolutely.
So if you have it in your heart to adopt a senior, please do. So how long have you had Kiko?
Kiko and I've been together only 2 weeks, but it's already starting to feel like much longer. We're bonding very closely. She's a special girl. She was in the shelter for more than a month. Wow. But, she just fits in with everything I do with Gray Muzzle, because what Gray Muzzle does is provides grants to rescues and shelters all across the country for senior dog programs to help them get the dentals they need to get adopted, to get some diagnostic testing, because sometimes people are, a little more hesitant to adopt if they don't know if there could be some hidden health condition. And, those are the kind of things that make them more adoptable, as well as what Gray Muzzle does is tries to keep senior dogs in homes they already have. And sometimes senior dogs do have some medical issues that are hard to pay for. So through our grants, we're able to provide vouchers to many of these people to get the pets the help they need.
Fantastic. When you talk about dental health, I think that's one thing that pet owners in general don't realize, that if a pet's teeth have not been cared for, right, it can cause lots of disease and lots of pain, right? Where it could even cause a dog to bite, right, out of that pain if you approach that dog, right?
A toothache makes anybody grouchy, you know?
Exactly.
And you know,
That's so true.
It's very simple. The saliva, the bacteria in the mouth form plaque, and if you
Right.
don't scrape it off, it stays in the mouth, can form abscesses, and it actually starts lifting the gum away from the tooth. So that means it can travel to the brain, to the heart valves, to the kidneys and liver, and so on. So by keeping your dog's mouth clean, you're overall keeping her healthier.
So true. It's the same for humans as it is for canines, right?
There you go. We
Well-
just don't do the water pick.
Or the flossing, right? No flossing for Kiko. So, you know, we're excited today to talk about pet safety, first aid, all of those things. And, you know, kind of before we dig into that, you know, our content, tell us a little bit about what changed your life and how you moved from being a publicist at Paramount, right, to being this amazing pet safety expert, and how Sunny Dog was that catalyst.
She sure was. My husband and I adopted a yellow Labrador for our first wedding anniversary. She made us a family. We were no longer a couple, we were now a family. And one day when she was 8 years old, she woke up and she couldn't get up off the floor. And when she tried, she just said, it was like blood-curdling screams. It was just chilling. This was a dog who complained about nothing, and she was obviously in great pain. Long story short, we found out later she had ruptured 3 discs in her spine. And it probably wasn't even an injury. Like all of us, you know, sometimes things just don't fit quite right together, and after years and years of rubbing, there's a flare-up. And that's what happened. And at that point, my husband and I lived in a little cabin in the Hollywood Hills, literally 110 railroad tie steps from the car to the house up the hill. Wow. So, you know, carrying an 80, 90-pound dog down all those steps who was in pain was a daunting task. Fortunately, I developed a really good relationship with my vet. He sent a vet tech to our house, and we got Sunny on a stretcher and got her the care she needed. But that was the moment that I just never wanted to be caught unprepared when my furry kid needed me. So I jumped on the bandwagon and have just been taking courses and developing courses ever since in pet first aid and senior pet care and pet disaster preparedness. I've even was training high school kids to take care of animals.
Fantastic. You know, when you think about pet safety, right, many of us, I've been adopting and rescuing dogs since 2003. And when I think about all the conversations I've had with, right, fellow advocates, one thing that doesn't usually come up in our conversation is, hey, I took this really great pet safety course, or I took this really great first aid course, when in fact, that's probably one of the first things you should do right after you get the bed and the food and the bowls and the toys, right, is, hey, how do I look out for my pet? And you know, you have the 6-hour video on your site for training and safety tips. So we'll talk about that as well. So Sunny changed the course, and then you were right on the path, all in, right?
I really was, and then each successive dog brought another element to it. I wrote a story about my dog named Sushi, who was my first Akita, and it ended up in Dog Fancy magazine, so that sent me on the path of writing for magazines. And then Mr. Rico, my black lab, sent me on the path of doing things for kids. And one of the amazing things, reason I actually started writing books for children, is when I was teaching a high school animal care class, I found out from the parents that what I was teaching the students was they were going home and telling their parents. And although kids don't always listen to their parents, parents listen to the kids, and the parents were calling me and saying, well, so is this a good dog food for our family dog? And it just made me realize that if we start with the younger generation, we'll probably actually, through osmosis, teach the older generation better animal care. Because when you have a dog or a cat, you basically have a furry toddler for life. You know?
Right, a furry 2-year-old, right? They never really get beyond, right, the age of a 2-year-old human being, right? So, you know, they age, but, right, their mental acuity is really, you know, of a 2-year-old. They're a toddler.
So we got to watch and supervise and keep them safe.
Correct. So I read on your site, 9 of 10 dogs, so 90% of all pets are going to experience an emergency in their life. That's huge, right? So I thought that number is so high, I better take some pet safety courses, because you can't always run to the vet, or the vet might not be open, right? Or you have to get to emergency vet, which is much farther away on a Sunday, right, an off day of the week, and that 25% of cats and dogs could be saved if first aid is administered before they get to the vet. Let's talk about that.
Exactly. If you know how to bring down your pet's body temperature, you can prevent his brain from swelling and his whole gastrointestinal system from cooking. If you know how to minimize blood loss and put a bandage on a wound, you can, prevent that pet from bleeding out and prevent infection from getting in. If you know how to induce vomiting on a dog, you can get that poison the heck out of the body. But it's also equally important to know when not to induce vomiting. And a big part of my classes is just opening people's eyes to what they can do to prevent emergencies from happening in the first place. However, I can't put Kiko in a plastic bubble. Life is going to happen.
Right.
So I'm going to want to know what to do when it does.
Sure. So let's just talk a little bit about, getting his body temperature down. How would you know, what would be the first cue to say, oh, let me get his body temperature down before we get in the car and go to the vet?
Well, you need to be able to check your pet's vitals, and knowing your pet's body temperature is really important. Unlike us at 98.6 degrees, dogs generally are somewhere between 100.4 and 102.5 degrees Fahrenheit. So you want to know where in that, range your pet normally lies. And then, obviously just picking up signs. Panting can mean other things than besides just being too hot, but knowing about the environment, knowing what the pet has just done, taking those things in and taking the temperature would be a big clue.
So let me ask you this. Give me the top 3 things that most pet owners may come across, right, as an emergency, or they think it's an emergency, the most common things that we can look out for.
Well, there's stomach upsets, obviously. And sure, it can be related to poison, but most often the dog ate too much, too fast, or something he should never have gotten into. So it's important to know, what I always say is you need to get down on all fours and look at your environment like your pet does at, 7 to 22 inches off the floor, and keep it safe. Another thing that's very common, particularly with dogs, would be choking.
Yes.
They don't have opposable thumbs, so everything goes in their mouth. So that's part of the getting down on all fours, because anything that's on the floor is fair game, and they've got these amazing sniffers.
Yes.
And, they can sniff things behind cabinets or up on counters or, behind shelves. So we have to be very careful about, what they can get into. And then obviously too is just, a cut or a scrape or even a bee sting, because they're, again, curious. So those are all things we cover in a first aid class. And like you said, Sue, it's not the end of the line. We may still end up at the veterinarian, but sometimes what we do first can really make a big difference in their recovery. And in worst case scenarios can really save their life if we can do artificial respiration and keep that life-giving blood and oxygen going until we can get to the vet.
Yeah, well, I saw one of your clips from KTLA where you were actually, demonstrating that on one of your stuffed animal dogs, right? And, one of the things that I think is important is if you have children, at home, approaching a dog who's in an emergency situation, right? It's very critical that, let's say you're the doggy parent and Kiko's choking, something's lodged in her throat. The first thing you might want to do is warn your children, step away, right? Because the child would want to rush over and help their doggy, but the dog in distress could bite them even though it's your family member, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
I mean, they're just, they're already in distress. They're kind of in a panic, and it's just a body or a hand coming at them, and they feel the need to defend. And of course, we need to teach children, proper ways to respond and act around an animal. But, sometimes we need to remind adults too, not to rush in and put their face in and the whole bit. But yes, every dog is a unique individual just like us, and they might respond to an injury differently.
Right. So let's take choking. And I don't know if you can demonstrate on Kiko, but let's say Kiko had part of a toy or something lodged in her throat. How would you approach Kiko to actually open her mouth and reach in and try to grab that out? Because she might asphyxiate before you even get her to the emergency vet.
Well, that's true. Basically, I have 4 steps with choking. First is I let the dog cough a little bit on their own. I don't think Kiko really understands gravity. She said, ha.
Can you spell gravity, Kiko?
But, typically when an animal has something caught, they're leaning their head downward and they're coughing, trying to propel that object out. And very often they can. So you kind of just want to be at the ready, because if it was something slippery like a rawhide shoe or, any
Piece of a
toy,
toy,
you
right.
want to be able to create a distraction or a diversion to get it away from her before she takes it back in again. But if she's having trouble and can't seem to get it out, the next thing I would do, only if I felt safe doing it, was take a look inside. Sometimes a dog's too much in a panic and you can't do that. So if you can't, you move on to what I call the doggy Heimlich-like maneuver. It's an abdominal thrust. And basically what you just have to picture is a triangle on the center of the dog's chest. That's where the ribs are.
Okay.
You're going to put a dog Kiko's size. I would put the fist, this part of my fist, in the soft part of her belly. I would then cover with my opposite hand, and I'm going to give her a big bear hug, and I'd pull up towards my chest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If she stands up in a moment, I'll show you right away, but I'm not going to do it on her.
Sure. No,
But the key, though, is that you have to lean into the dog. You have to make sure your chest, your tummy, whatever's hanging lower, is up against her back so that you're pulling against her.
Okay.
If it was a smaller dog, you would just put like the flats of 2 fingers in that same spot, and you could certainly put them against you, but you need to tabletop yourself. You want to keep the dog on their normal 4 on the floor or even slightly tipped downward position.
Okay.
As humans, we come up behind a person, but we normally, walk upright.
Right.
Dogs don't. So if you flip a dog up like that up against you, you're actually giving a gravity assist for whatever that is to go farther down her throat.
Aha. And ideally, that's what we would like to happen, even though we don't know necessarily what that object is.
Yeah, no, we want it to come out. We don't want
Right.
it to slip farther down. And what sometimes happens is whatever it is, if it's big like a tennis ball, it's expanding the food tube, the esophagus. So that's pushing on the airway, making it tiny, which might make her go unconscious and then also need mouth to snout resuscitation as well.
And, mouth to snout, right? Everybody, there are family members, we think, oh gosh, they're just like us, but no, right? They're similar, but not the same. We're both mammals, but when it comes to CPR, and this is something you cover in your class, right?
Absolutely. And just briefly to play on what you're saying, with a human, we pinch off the nose and breathe in the mouth. But if you notice my Kiko here, her smile line comes farther around her face.
Yes.
So if I was to breathe in her mouth, the air would go right out the flues.
Right.
So I'm going to seal off the mouth and breathe directly into the nostrils.
Got it. Very interesting. So how, with COVID and everything that we're going through at this point in time, I think a lot of people would say, oh, I'm going to do the 6-hour video. How is that different than the 10-week and the 20-week classes that you have taught in the past? And could you get everything you needed from that 6-hour video as opposed to having to go out and take a class in person?
You absolutely can if you're looking to take the course. My 10 and week longer courses are actually to train instructors in various communities. So I spend a lot more time with them because I want them to know the backstories as well as, all of the basic information so that they're prepared to answer any questions their students may have in the future. And that's one of the things, I've really been putting my heart into, Sue, is training the next generation of pet first aid instructors, because there are so many communities out there that don't have access to this information. And I have just had so many success stories from students and even, myself, of animals that have been helped before they can get to veterinary care. So it's just really, truly life-saving.
It's so true in any animal issue that I've come across, be it spay, neuter, dog fighting, just basic care of an animal. Education and knowledge is the only missing factor. It's not that people don't want to do it. They just don't know where low cost or free spay neuter is available, right? Or, you're right, teaching the children, right, who can teach their parents, right, who are working, they don't have time to go to these classes, and yet, right, they come home and they help their parents learn to care for the animal better.
Well, that's it. And there is no real pet parenting 101 class.
Right, and there should be, Denise, so I think you should spearhead that.
Well, I try to sneak it in with the pet first aid because I figure when I have a captive audience, give them as much as they can get.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about prevention, right? We go, okay, I want to take this class and I'm going to be good when I know when something's happening, right? But let's prevent something. from happening. So house and backyard, those are the two places we're mostly going to have our pets. Give us some prevention tips.
Well, like I said, it may sound silly, but literally get down on all fours and look at life from your pet's perspective, because you want it may be perfectly clean from 5'6" or 6'2", wherever you stand, but down at her level, it's a whole different world, especially with that incredible sniffer. So sometimes people actually have to put childproof locks on cabinets. My yellow lab Sunny learned to open our refrigerator. And she, helped herself to things that weren't necessarily good for her. We went through a couple childproof locks in order to keep herself safe. Amazing. So you really want to look at everything. Over-the-counter drugs, even if they're over-the-counter, that doesn't mean they can't be fatal to a pet. And many a pet has just chewed open a bottle, even if it had the childproof lid on it.
Sure.
They can just chew it open and eat it out from the bottom. So you really, like I said, it's a toddler in the house. When you're having company over, ask them to close their guest room or keep their suitcases zipped, because there's going to be all kinds of amazing smells that they're going to pick up on, and your guest might have some things in there. Something as innocuous as the sugarless gum they may have been chewing on the airplane could have xylitol, which could literally be deadly for Kiko.
Right.
So you want to think about that. When you're baking in the house, especially when you get in the colder weather and there are yeast breads rising on the counter, if your dog gets a hold of that before it's baked, not only could that be an intestinal obstruction or a choking hazard, but that yeast will continue to ferment in the dog's body and could cause alcohol poisoning.
Wow. This is just such valuable information. I've learned so much today. I hope you guys have too. But really, things like this are part of that course. And I also noticed, you've published 10 books, right? They're all available on our website, as well as Amazon, right? And you have is it the Pet Safety Bible?
Yes, that's like my most comprehensive book to date. It's the Pet Safety Bible, which covers both dogs and cats, but I also have a specific dog version and a cat version. And it takes you from puppy or kittenhood all the way through seniorhood. There are tips for every holiday and every season of the year. And then the whole last half is really diving into first aid and CPR.
Right. So, you talked about, right, things being at their level. So, right, dogs come in all shapes and sizes. And I know dogs that are like Kiko's size and even bigger, right, can do the counter surfing in the kitchen, right? Dogs have, taken that turkey off the, counter at Thanksgiving time, right? And so you really have to, if your dog is this tall, right, and they can open the refrigerator, right, these are things that you have to really be careful about. And the prescription jugs and the gum, these are just great tips.
Well, yeah, and a lot of dogs have feline siblings, and they can climb, you may have to get on a step stool to look what's on your shelves in the top of the refrigerator. I mean, I've seen a Chihuahua or two jump on a countertop too.
No, you're right. Yeah, so that's definitely something that we as parents need to be.
And you said it right there. We're parents, and we have to supervise.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So today, you're president of Gray Muzzle, and are you actively teaching during COVID? Are you doing Zoom teaching?
I was doing Zoom when Zoom wasn't cool.
Wow, so that's a couple years ago, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've started doing that. I was doing a lot of in-person classes and conferences, but obviously that has slowed down during COVID. So I'm doing a lot of Zoom. And like I said, what I'm really trying to do is train a lot more instructors so that when everybody can get back out there and take classes, and I have a lot of people teaching right now, like in outdoor areas or social distancing, but that will have instructors in most parts of the country so that everybody will be able to find this important information and keep their pups safe.
Wonderful. Denise, thank you so much for being such a wonderful and informative guest. You can find Denise's books and her training video at PetSafetyCrusader.com. Thank you for joining us today on Welcome Home Doggy. Please go out and check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, and click a like and follow us. I'm Sue Bova. Thank you so much for joining us on Welcome Home Doggy.
Pet overpopulation is a national problem. Georgia has some of the highest euthanasia rates in the country. With an area the size of Maryland without basics like animal control, rescues, shelters, or even veterinarians. The Georgia Pet Foundation provides statewide spay-neuter grants to organizations to help decrease pet overpopulation. Do your part to help. Purchase a Georgia Pet Foundation spay-neuter tag through your local tag office, with proceeds going to support spay-neuter efforts in Georgia. Buy a tag, save a life.